the most important thing in copy is really the thinking. Once you get your core message correct, then you can wordsmith it and tweak things later on when you're writing your sales page or emails. Tension seeks release. So when you create that tension through your marketing copy, people are going to want to release that through taking action, the action of buying your product.
All right, Billy, welcome to the Art of Online Business podcast. And we're just going to start this episode off with a super meaty question. So like you as a marketing consultant, a copywriter, and the creator of the Five Lightbulbs messaging framework, please tell the listener like right now, what is the Five Lightbulbs messaging framework going to do for their marketing? And why does that matter for their business?
Thanks for having me, QUÄY.jo. The Five Lightbulbs will make your marketing simpler and a lot more potent. And the reason why that's important is because marketing is freaking overwhelming and it's gotten extremely complex. And we are just drowning in platforms, marketing platforms, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all those, and tactics. And so what the Five Lightbulbs does is it gives you a light to follow. It guides your path. And so you need all those other things too. But if you just check these 5 boxes, you'll be in good shape.
Nice. What is this thing to answer? And when you said we're just drowning in all of this, basically training and strategies, I can identify that. And I think with that, and I think the listener can too. So let's back up a bit. I would call you a master copywriter because when we first talked, we were introduced by Laura Sprinkle, and I should have written down what episode she was in, but she introduced us and you were kind enough to hop on to a call with me. And I really kind of just got to understand that you were doing mainly consulting and copywriting first, right?
You got it. Yeah. Yeah. Laura's awesome. Yeah. So a blend, you find with copywriting, I think a lot of copywriters have experienced this, that it can very quickly turn into strategy because the thinking behind the copy is more important than the wordsmithing.
Okay. So you, before we hit record, told me the beginning of a very interesting story about how you got into copywriting, and I was like, the listener needs to hear this. So it started with you having an online business, teaching people how to brew beer.
Exactly. Yeah. So it probably started in college when we were drinking a lot of beer, which led into my roommate and I brewing our own beer because we're like, oh man, this is going to be a great way to get people over to our parties. We can serve our own beer. And me being me, I tend to geek out on things. And I just did a deep dive into the art and science of brewing. And then it eventually led to this website where I was teaching online home brewing courses. And yeah, beer freed me from my 9 to 5.
Go into a little more detail on that. How did that happen?
Well, I loved my job. I really did. I was a consultant in the clean energy industry. So working on some pretty advanced clean energy projects, cellulosic ethanol, biomass. Again, I'm a nerd. So I love that stuff. But I also had this entrepreneurial itch. And I also, it was 2008 or so. So the 4-hour work week had just come out. I read Tim Ferriss's book and said, I want that. And I wanted to be free. I felt very limited in my career. And so the thing to do was to start a website. So I started a website, a WordPress website. I started blogging. Blogging was very big back then. And all the experts said, well, blog about what you know. And I said, well, I know how to brew a darn good beer. So I started blogging about that. And this is when the technology was getting to the point that you could do an online course pretty inexpensively. And so I started, and I love to teach. I really do love to teach. I love to learn. I love to teach. So I started teaching courses, and eventually it took some time. It was not an overnight thing, and it was really hard. But after a few years, I was making enough from my courses and a couple other revenue streams on that website that I put in my 2 weeks, much to the shock of my boss, because they knew I had the side project, but they didn't think it was actually going to go anywhere. And I was able to leave, and I haven't looked back.
That, I feel like you just understated something that is supremely successful.
Maybe. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, there were things I would have done differently. It didn't live up to my expectations. I set high expectations for that site. I thought it was going to be this $1 million thing. It didn't get there, but it was a stepping stone into what I'm doing now. And so I left that in 2017. I was able to sell it. And yeah, like I said, I haven't looked back. It's been a great journey.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh man. So I just love how you glossed over in 2008, you said, or 2007?
So I first started it in 2008. That was when the first version of the website went live.
Okay. So I mean, I'm super interested in various business journeys, but especially successful ones. So you have this blog teaching how to brew beer, and you replaced your let's call it clean, were you an engineer?
I wasn't an engineer. Most of my coworkers were. I was a business guy with an engineering background, but you have to have the engineering degree to claim engineership, so I won't claim that.
Okay, so you won't claim that. Well, let's just so you replaced your income working in the clean energy industry. And this is in California too, right?
No, this was in Virginia. So I grew up in Virginia. I went to James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and my job was there as well. So I got to stick around in my college town for a number of years. The journey to California came a number of years later.
Okay. So clean energy industry in Virginia, Harrisonburg. That's really close to the DMV, right?
DE, yeah, DC. Yeah, we actually we had federal clients. So we had Department of Energy as a client. We had Department of Homeland Security as a client. So I would travel up there pretty often. I didn't want to live there. Like that was where a lot of my peers went after college. But I stayed in the beautiful hills of Virginia and just made the occasional trek to the big city.
Okay, cool. So I'm talking to you, listener. If you don't know, I'll call it the most expensive vacation of my life, where everything was going well when I was living in China. And my wife and I, with no kids back then, decided to move to Washington, D.C., because I spoke fluent Chinese and she spoke fluent Spanish, and we were going to go and work for the government. And long story short, that didn't work out. But what I learned is that all those counties right around Washington, D.C., those areas, like some of the most expensive cost of living places in the entire US of A. Am I right?
You're right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Northern Virginia. Yeah, it's one of the wealthiest areas of the country. I would drive through there on the way to DC and just marvel at all the houses.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So to give context, you have this brewing blog and you replace your full-time job income and you quit the full-time job in one of the highest cost of living areas in the US. That I would say is a pretty cool accomplishment.
Well, Harrisonburg, where I was living, did not have a very high cost of living. It was very much up in the hills, very rural. But yeah, I was able to match that income after a few years, and
Okay.
yeah, and that gave me the confidence to jump ship. Yeah, in hindsight, I should have had more savings going into it. But hey, like that's the benefit of youth, right? Yeah, yeah. You jump in first, ask questions later.
Very, 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 very true. So we're gonna get down to copywriting and how this all ties in, but I just kind of wanted to unpack that story a little bit because we haven't even talked about that before hitting record. So I'm just
No, we didn't bring that one up.
genuinely curious. And then so copywriting is what you attribute the success of that website to, yeah?
Yes, if I had to distill it down to one thing, it was that I was very humbled in starting that website. I went into it all cocky because I had a business degree. So after I got my undergrad, I stayed at JMU and I got my MBA. And so I thought, okay, well, I got this fancy business degree, and it really did help. I'm not a lot of people like to bash those degrees. It really did help with my career because I was doing finance for those clean energy projects, so I needed that. But when it came to selling a $47 beer brewing course over the internet, those MBA classes were not too helpful. And so I discovered this thing called copywriting. I said, well, how do I sell it? Like, how do I sell it? What is the skill that I need? Because I spent my whole life learning things and learning skills. And I thought copywriting, I thought it was the other copywriting. I thought it was a legal term, right? Like with an R. But no, copyright, like writing with a pen. And once I discovered that, I've always enjoyed reading and writing, and so you combine that with my interest in business and like building ventures, and it's no surprise that I latched on to copywriting. So, like I did with beer, I did the deep dive into copywriting.
Okay. What would be one point where basically low sales forced you to take, I don't know if you had like that kind of 7-day eating top ramen, just kind of ingesting how to copyright and updating the website to get sales? Was there like this kind of, well, you can't call it an overnight breakthrough, but did you have a situation like that where you just were struggling and then figured out copywriting and saw like your first sales come in because of it?
I was fortunate that I had the job and I was smart about saving money from that. So I had this cushion. And that's advice I give people too is like you can, rip the band-aid off or just jump in blind, but I recommend taking the stepping stone approach. And so I had those reserves. I had something to fall back on, which is probably also why I stayed so long in that job. I think if and I also enjoyed that career too. And so if I didn't have those things, then I probably would have gone quicker into self-employment. But there were certainly times where things just didn't work. I mean, I remember a product that I launched. It was a physical product too. I took an info product and I turned into these. I created laminated, essentially worksheets that people could fill out. These homebrewers could fill out as they're brewing their beer, so they can write down the temperature and the time and all the ingredients and everything. And I asked people if they wanted it, and they told me yes. And this is a good marketing lesson: is that they might tell you yes, but it's different to tell you yes verbally than with money. And so I printed off all these things. I did a big launch and everything, and I think I might have sold one, and that was to my brother.
Okay. All right. So let's I really want you to share about like the five light bulbs, but before we get to that, since you said this messaging framework matters so much for the online course creator and the online coach, and like I've seen it because I've gone and consumed all the info on your website. Well, not all of it, but a lot of the info on your website. Can you just touch on the importance of messaging?
Yeah, I think it's because of my engineering background that I really believe in the idea of leverage and doing the little things that make the biggest difference. I mean, I remember doing that. Like I said, I would do financial analysis for these clean energy projects, and we would do something called a sensitivity analysis. So I was like, okay, well, if we can get the cost down of the equipment, these solar panels, then our ROI on the project is going to go up by X amount. So my brain was wired to think that way, and so I was thinking that way too when it came to online business. And what I saw was that a lot of these things that I was doing, that the experts were telling me to do, and that other people, my peers, were doing, just weren't high leverage, weren't big needle movers. Mainly when it came to these tactics and like plugins and countdown timers and all these little things, sort of at the margins. And then even within, and then I distilled it down and said, hey, well, rather than if I want to boost conversions, I can install one of these countdown timers or a pop up or something, but that adds a lot of complexity. It's something now that can break. I'd rather just rewrite a headline and boost my conversions that way. It's a lot simpler. It's a lot higher leverage. And then within copywriting, the same thing happened where I said, there's a lot of these low leverage things in copywriting, which is mainly around these copywriting tactics and the wordsmithing and all that. Because when you get down to it, the most important thing in copy is really the thinking that goes into it. And that's what the five light bulbs does. It helps you think about your core message. And it's not about wordsmithing. That's downstream. Once you get your core message correct, then you can wordsmith it and tweak things later on when you're writing your sales page or emails or Facebook ads in your case.
I like it. I want to hear about these five light bulbs. You ready?
Let's dive in.
But first, you have a testimonial on your like at the fivelightbulbs.com. And where is it? I looked at this guy's picture and I was like, is that Elon Musk? I think it's nobody else has told you that. I think it's this guy, Tiago
Oh, is it
Forte.
Tiago?
Tiago.
Oh yeah, he gets that a lot. Yeah, I was just with him last night. Yeah,
Okay,
Tiago
so it's not just
Forte.
me.
Yeah, he's the creator of a productivity system called Building a Second Brain, and he has a great book out by the same name. So he's a client and now a friend, someone that I've helped, and we've worked together.
Awesome. Okay. I think that's cool that you can be friends with clients. And I guess we can say that Elon Musk's doppelganger is one of your clients.
Yeah, I guess still
Um,
got to get that quote from Musk himself.
right? Probably couldn't be too hard. He's pretty active on Twitter or X.
Yeah, just
But
slide
I
into his
digress.
DM.
I digress. So the five light bulbs. What's the first light bulb?
Light bulb one. So that is what we call the status quo or the unacceptable. status quo, and it should be unacceptable, meaning that there should be demand. And something to know about me is that I really love studying the copywriters of the past. I believe that there are more lessons to learn from them, not so much because they were more talented, but because they had favorable constraints in the sense that they didn't have all these distractions. They were sending out direct mail and they had to pay for an envelope and pay for a stamp. It's not like today we can just send out an email for virtually nothing. And so what that means is that it was their lessons were sort of born out of necessity, and those lessons are very, very valuable, and we've forgotten a lot of those. So this idea of the unacceptable status quo, most of my lessons, and really the five light bulbs, if I had to say it was inspired by one person, it would be Eugene Schwartz. And he had this idea. It's in the first couple of chapters of his famous book Breakthrough Advertising, that demand cannot be created, it can only be channeled. And a lot of people, a lot of marketers, business owners try to create demand for what they're selling, and you just can't do that. It's not going to work. What you can do is find someone who has demand and channel it towards your product. So that's what Lightbulb One represents. It's where the customer is now, where they have this demand. They have a place that they want to leave. It's a bad place. And please check out the visuals. I have a great illustrator, Matt Strebe. We created a whole world. We got a bear. We got an owl. It's very visual. I'm a very visual thinker. And you can see, like, it is a gnarly place that this bear wants to get away from. And so you want to give voice to Lightbulb One. You want to use the word you, not the word I or we. It's the language of empathy, Lightbulb One.
The numbers in the five light bulb framework, are these components that we should use in order, or what's behind the numbers?
Yeah, that's a really common question. How to use them? Yeah, think of them like you can think of them like different colors of paint, and you can create a painting any way that you want. And you can mix and match them. So you tend to see a pattern. You tend to see that, for example, light bulb four, to flash forward a little bit, is your offer, the product. You tend to see that at the end of, say, a sales page. But they're ingredients that you can mix and match and have a lot of fun with, and use in different recipes.
Okay, cool. So then light bulb one is the language of the customer and their status quo, like you're speaking to them where they're at, so to speak.
Exactly.
What would you say is like the most common misconception that you get about, like, from clients or course students about light bulb one after you teach it?
Well, it's really hard for people. People get it instantly. They say, "Oh yeah, like we need to be seen. We need to be heard." And we can feel that, right? Like, it helps with the five levels to put yourself in the customer's shoes. And we all know that experience of being marketed to, and you're like, does this person even get me? Do they even know my problem? They're just talking about themselves and how many awards they've won and how great they are. So we get that. But it's also hard. I found when I teach courses on the five light bulbs, it's hard to sit down and write light bulb one copy. And usually not because we're not empathetic, but because we are so empathetic that we want to jump right into the solution. And so the people I work with are very compassionate people, and they want to get into solving the problem. But I tell them that you can only best do that if the customer first knows that you understand the problem in the first place.
That is very, very, very true. We talk about it inside of, like, my Facebook ads course and, like, with clients that I'm actually running ads for, that you have got to do your research and really understand what people's problems are, what they've experienced that's keeping them from their problems, and, like, their perceived challenges, real or not. Like, you got to be in their head, so to speak, and that requires a lot of research. And that's what I see when I look at things like the listening, what you've written, the listening of or the language of listening, the language of empathy, of understanding. Would you say it's pretty accurate?
Absolutely. And that's the one you mentioned, Tiago. That was one where when we hit on that light bulb, it really opened the floodgates.
Okay, okay. So light bulb two.
Other things that they have tried before. So other things that your customer has tried and that haven't worked, that they are considering trying, or that they're being tempted by. So you might ask, who else is marketing to or advertising to my customer? And it would be wrong. We don't like this one because we want to pretend like we're the only game in town, but it would be wrong to ignore those things. What you want to do is to give voice to them. And so that's true with all the light bulbs. Don't leave these as just answers on a worksheet. Give voice to them. Are the words on the page? Are they on your web page? And when you do that, you become a buying coach of sorts. You're helping them shop for products like yours. And it's important to do this honestly. And this is my favorite illustration because you can see the whole scene here. So you see light bulb one, you can see the burnt forest over there because your customer has been burned in the past. You can see the bear there with the different bridges, and you can see the broken bridges representing the light bulb twos, the other bridges that they've tried that haven't worked. But he's a resilient bear and he's climbed back up and he's ready to try again. But man, he's jaded. And so you really got to earn his trust. And that's where light bulb one and light bulb two can really come into play. And you see the owl there as well. So the owl represents you, the entrepreneur, the business owner. Reason it's an owl is because an owl has perspective. An owl flies high and can see the landscape. And I'm sure your listeners have been in this situation where you have a client or customer come to you and they think they are the very first ones to experience this problem. And you're like, you've been there, right? And you're like, I've seen this a million times before, right? I've seen this because I have perspective. I'm an owl. I fly high. There's a lot of hidden symbolism in the illustrations here, but that's what the owl represents.
Okay. All right. I like when you kind of it seems like Lightbulb 2 has this idea of really understanding what the customer has tried and failed at. What about what they're being tempted by? Like, I saw that on your website. Can you go into that? Like, what do you mean when you say what they're being tempted by?
Yeah, I think we're all being tempted to buy things. We see these ads, we see people on social media talking about different solutions, and we're asking ourselves, well, is that the thing? Is that the thing that's going to get me to the other side of the bridge, to light bulb 5? And so what you want to do is not so much say, no, those things aren't right for you. Like the competitor stinks. They're terrible. I'm the best in the world, because that's not making an honest argument. And I do believe that marketing is making a strong argument. And so what you want to do is lay out the criteria and say, hey, first of all, those bridges might be right for you. And here are the circumstances where they might be right for you. And that's what I was saying earlier, that there should be some cases where you are sending people away to those other bridges because you're not the best fit for them. It should never be the case that you're always the right fit for everyone all the time.
But Billy, in your illustration, those other bridges don't look too good.
Yeah, those are pretty gnarly, but there's another one that you can't see that's good.
Right. So, before we go to light bulb 3, 4, and 5, how do the light bulbs actually work? Like, let's say somebody does their research and they understand light bulbs 1 through 5 as pertain to their offer. Now it's time for them to write a sales page or to write copy for Facebook ads. Like, how do they end up using the light bulbs? And is it all light bulbs in every piece of copy, or are you doing certain combinations? Can you break that down?
Yeah, and that's mainly what I do these days when I do my copywriting projects, is like because people see the 5 light bulbs and it helps, the light bulb comes on and it helps them clarify their message. But then there is this gap between that and then actually writing a long form sales letter or Facebook ads or something. So that's primarily what I do in my copywriting, and then that's also what we do in our courses, is help people bridge that gap. But you can use all the light bulbs in a content piece, or you might just use one. And so I would encourage people, if you go to the website, you can look at the swipe file. We have a 5 lightbulb swipe file. I mean, it's totally one of those things where once you see the light bulbs, you can't unsee them. And I go back and I'll walk through a sales letter from 100 years ago and point out the light bulbs in it. So it really is this hidden language. And some of them you'll see all the light bulbs. Some you'll see just light bulb 3. So I know you're a master of Facebook ads, and a lot of your listeners do Facebook ads. I would say test different light bulbs. As I said about that client, Tiago Forte, for him, it was light bulb 1 that really opened the floodgates for him. That was the one that he needed to hit. For other people, it's been light bulb 3. That's a very common one because that's the one that helps you stand out in a crowded industry. So that's my answer, is to test these different light bulbs.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I definitely do agree. Light bulb 1, especially because so much of us will just say, "Hey, here's our thing. It will solve your problem. It's the best thing ever," right? But nowadays, people need to hear that you understand that they have tried other things. You do understand where they're trying to get away from. And I like how you mentioned that is it frequently that you contrast light bulb 5 with light bulb 1 to provide some healthy tension?
Great insight. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when you combine light bulb 1, and that's why it's set up that way. I know it can seem kind of weird, but the reason why, because a lot of people would think that it would end in light bulb 4, right, which is the product. But light bulb 5 is what they experience after using your product. And when you put those side by side, it's kind of like the before and after light bulb 1 and light bulb 5. So we actually use that term tension and release. So tension seeks release. So when you create that tension through your marketing copy, people are going to want to release that through taking action, the action of buying your product.
All right. Well, before we get all the way to light bulb 5, light bulb 3 is up on the screen. So break that down for us.
Yeah, this is my favorite. It's a really interesting one. And this is the one that was really inspired by Eugene Schwartz. He called this the mechanism or the unique mechanism. So this is how you stand out. And what he found was that when markets get really saturated and when everyone's making the same promises, and when you hear that word promise, you should think light bulb 5 from now on, because that's what you're promising, right? It's the other side of the bridge. But what happens when everyone's making the same promises? Like, what else do the customers have to buy upon? Well, that's where he noticed that the emphasis in the marketing material shifts in the copywriting, the language shifts from light bulb 5, to light bulb 3. And that was in the 50s. And he was complaining about crowded marketplaces. I mean, that was pre-internet, right? So imagine now. So that's why light bulb 3 is really crucial today. And that's the one, like when I work with clients and students, that we spend a lot of time on, because that is your best bet for standing out in a crowded marketplace.
It's kind of like in YouTube world where they talk about you need to be you, but just more of you, because that ends up making you unique and a differentiator. Light bulb 3, you really feel like is your favorite one because it helps people stand out in the marketplace?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's a great example. Yeah, you become more of you. It becomes more like your unique fingerprint, right? And it's also and usually what happens when you do that is that you attract those people naturally, right, who resonate with you. You're on the same vibration. And so if you look closely at the illustration there, you'll see the owl sitting on the bridge, but then you see a call out where we zoom in on the bridge. And what do you see? You see these steel reinforcements. Okay, why is there a steel reinforcement? Well, because bears are heavy, and because you have this heavy bear crossing the bridge, so it's tailored to the bear, and that's an important word, tailored. And so your light bulb 3 should be tailored to your customer. And when you do that, it plays into the light bulb 2 because they're all related. You're able to say, you know what, like this bridge isn't right for, say, a fish that wants to cross. A fish might need something more like an aqueduct to swim across.
Sure, sure.
Bathtub.
A fish
Uh,
ladder.
a what?
A fish ladder, I believe.
Yeah, a
Salmon use
fish
fish
ladder.
ladders? Yeah.
Yeah, like a fish conveyor belt. But you don't need. But fishes, they don't weigh. Fish don't weigh a whole lot, so you don't need the steel reinforcements, right? So you really want to think about light bulb 3 as being tailored to a certain type of customer, and when you do that, you're naturally going to exclude people. But that's what you want, because when you try to please everyone, as we know, you please no one.
You say light bulb 3, it's your strategy, it's your methodology, it's your special ingredient. Would I be able to add is this where signature framework fits in?
Totally. Yeah, exactly. You got a signature framework, blueprint, formula. Being in the marketing world, we know all these terms. So it's amazing how you see Lipo 3 across product categories. So yeah, in the online course or information marketing world, it's something like your formula, your blueprint, your system. In the supplement world, it's your secret ingredient. In the clothing world, it's the shock absorbers in your shoes, your sneakers. Right. So that's what I mean by, once you see the light bulbs, you can't unsee them. And then the cool thing is you can pull lessons from all these different ads now. You can borrow, if you're in the online course world, light bulb 3 inspiration from a sneaker ad and use it to sell your course.
Huh. I like this. All right. Light bulb 4, light bulb 4.
Yeah. So this is the one most people are familiar with. This is your product, or what we call your offer, because a lot of transactions are made for reasons beyond just the product. There might be a bonus, there might be special pricing terms, there might be a strong guarantee. Those are all components of your offer. So the offer is just it's the vehicle for your approach, for your system, for your light bulb 3. So said another way, your light bulb 4 is a vehicle for your light bulb 3. And that's the action step. That's where the customer, the bear, says, okay, I believe that you understand me. I believe that those bridges aren't the best bridges for me. I believe in your approach. How do I make it happen, and how much?
So light bulb 4 really isn't, or light bulb 4 really is the final light bulb if you're kind of looking at the light bulbs, if you could put them in order and you're looking at a journey to get your thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then hopefully they have success with your product and then get to experience that light bulb 5 that you promised.
Okay. So many times on, let's say, a sales page, because I was just doing a review of a client's sales page, you get down to the bottom of the sales page where the checkout, the actual, put in your credit card payment information, your name, your email, and all that good stuff is down there. And that represents a hurdle, right? Because we're gonna pay a price for a program, $7.97, if you will. So looking at Lightbulb 4, what other light bulbs do you combine with Lightbulb 4 to reduce the risk? Let's say lower the hurdle of actually someone pulling out their credit card and buying your program. Not
Yeah,
yours, but let's say the
I
list.
love that question. Yeah, the idea is that you want to have the hard work done by the time they get there. So the management consultant Peter Drucker has this great quote that marketing makes selling unnecessary. And so you can think about light bulb 4 as selling and the other light bulbs as marketing. And so one thing we do, I mean, I do a lot of copywriting and consulting on online course launches, online product launches. And what we notice is that when we dedicate or shift more messaging to light bulb 3, selling our approach, we more easily sell the product.
Okay. All right. Any specific component of Lightbulb 3 that really, I mean, I know it has many components, but what's like the one your go-to or your students go to really sell their product with Lightbulb 3?
My best advice for light bulb 3 is this idea of making an argument for it. And I don't mean argue like you might, like two drunk fans at a baseball game might argue, not that kind of argument, but an Aristotle type argument, a rhetorical argument. And then you can ask yourself, okay, well, how do you make a good argument? And you can go back to, you can read like Aristotle's teachings on this, and to distill it down, what you want to do is make claims and back them up with proof. And not a lot of people do that these days. You see a lot of copywriting where it's just big, bold claims and no proof whatsoever. But if you study the old copywriters, they weren't too big on these big, hypey promises. They were very much looking for proof elements that they could weave into their copy. And so when you do that and you make a strong rhetorical argument for your light bulb 3, making claims, backing them up with proof, then you essentially remove any objection that your customer has to buying. And then that makes them a lot more likely when they scroll down that long sales page to click add to cart.
So I feel like this Lightbulb 3 also is speaking to that logical middle section of the sales page, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. You might. I use a metaphor of this foundation of logic because you have to have logic. They have to be able to connect the dots between, say, your mechanism, your light bulb 3, and how that leads to the solution that they want, the light bulb 5. But then the way that you then going more into the proof side of things, the way that you get that point across is through emotion, and so you can use a story to help connect those dots. So it's always that combination, that duo of logic and emotion.
I like it. I like it. We're going to slide on down to the combination of logic and emotion. I might need to steal that in my next sales page consultation call. I have one coming up later this week. Um, Thank you. Thank you. So, Lightbulb 5. We kind of teased it earlier, but you pair this one with Lightbulb 1 to create tension, kind of like a before and after, before and after shot. But is this like painting what's possible, or go? You tell
Yeah,
me. You're the creator of Lightbulb 5. I'm just
yeah,
playing.
no problem. Yeah, when I was running the beer website, I started bumping into other people because I was hanging out in the online communities. I was especially big in the copy blogger community back in the day, and met a lot of other people like me, subject matter experts, not professional marketers. And so I started helping them because I like I said, I geeked out on copywriting, and so even though had much bigger businesses than me, I could say, hey, well, if you just tweak this headline or do this, I think you can really boost things. And the pitfall that I see with a lot of them, with subject matter experts even today, is that they tend to not connect the dots between their solution and what the solution can do for someone. They get so caught up in their product and the nitty gritty of it. And so Lightbulb 5 it's a way to check that box and make sure that you connect the dots between your product and what it can do for someone, because you cannot take that for granted when it comes to copywriting.
How did you just so accurately express even a problem that I've had? I feel like, is there anything deeper that you can share about like connecting the dots in the right way?
Yeah, and I it's the same thing happens to me. I mean, I'm writing a sales letter for myself right now, and I'm reminding I have the 5 light bulbs. I'm like, okay, make sure you hit on the light bulb 5. They don't know what this geeky copywriting thing is, right? What can this do for them at the end of the day? What's in it for me? A great thing to study, again, going back to the Greek philosophers, is this idea of teleology or telos, and it's this idea of looking at something and looking at its end purpose. So I can describe something like this water glass here scientifically, and I can say that it's 4 inches high, 3 inches in diameter, it's quartz crystal. But the telos of it would be to refresh my mouth during this podcast recording. Right. So that word telos is a great one to keep in mind when writing copy. It's been largely forgotten, but it's so relevant today.
Talos. So the outcome, what it does, break that. Okay, cool. Cool. It's use, the outcome, what it could do for you. That's connecting the dots. As soon as you said connecting the dots, I thought of these coloring book pages that my kids have. One's 7, one's 4. They both still like them, even though my 4-year-old is not good at connecting the dots. And even I'm like, bro, can't you count? It says 1, 2, 3 right there. There's only 6 dots on the whole thing, and it's a fish. But
That's great. Yeah, I know what I have a daughter, so I know what you mean. Yeah, it's something when I wanted to really learn copywriting, I hired the top copywriting coach I could find, a guy named David Garfinkel, who I'm still close with, and he has this thing that he calls Garf's law of work, and it goes, he who does the work gets paid. And so if you do the work as the copywriter and connecting the dots between your product and what it can do for people, you get paid in the form of them buying your product. If the reader has to do the work, then they get paid in the form of them keeping the money that they were going to pay you. So that's Garf's law of work. I love that one.
oh my gosh, he who does the work gets paid. We better do the work of connecting the dots for people who visit our sales pages and read our emails. Otherwise, we're not going to get paid. They'll do the work in their mind. They'll get paid by keeping their money. Dang, I never heard of that. That could
Yeah.
end the episode right there.
Yeah,
Shoot.
Garf's the man. And look, and those light bulbs look awfully like dots, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, on that note, where can somebody go if they want to learn more about the 5 Lightbulbs?
Yeah, go to fivelightbulbs.com. We have an intro series on there and also a swipe file. Really start studying. Look for the light bulbs and ads. Look at billboards, look at TV commercials, social media ads. You're going to see them everywhere. And so we'll give you a swipe file to get you started, but please start adding your own clippings to it. Get that email series. And then on my own personal website, billybroas.com, I have a weekly newsletter that goes out. Obviously, I love bulbs. So this one is called Billy's Monday Light Bulb.
Billy's Monday Light Bulb. Thanks for sharing this. I feel like it does so clearly express a lot of concepts that really do change copywriting and marketing for like an online course creator, online membership owner, online coach, that even I've struggled to articulate so well. And you just make it seem ultra simple, like 5 light bulbs.